Discovering you've been lied to is never easy. It's a gut-wrenching experience, especially when the person deceiving you is your partner of 10 years. I'm a 37-year-old man, married to my 36-year-old wife. We've shared a decade of marriage, both working as professionals in the IT sector, and we don't have children. For most of those years, our marriage has been happy. However, over the last few months, my wife's behavior has changed in ways I couldn't ignore. Though we work for different companies, our offices are located in the same area, and we share the same lunch hour. We often used to enjoy lunches together, sometimes with colleagues joining us. That routine abruptly changed about 6 months ago. At first, my wife gave plausible excuses. She was swamped with work or her boss had called an emergency meeting. I brushed it off initially, assuming her reasons were genuine. But soon, her behavior shifted further. She started coming home late, citing similar work-related reasons. Since our industry often demands long hours, I tried to be understanding. My suspicions, however, began to grow one evening during dinner. While she was typing on her phone, I instinctively reached out to set it aside because we have a rule: no phones at the table. To my surprise, she reacted with panic, snatching the phone away and standing up abruptly. This had never happened before. From the beginning of our relationship, we've operated on mutual trust, so much so that we never felt the need to share phone passwords. Until that moment, I'd never even considered checking her phone. She claimed she'd been texting her sister, who'd had a bad day at work. Though I said nothing further, her reaction left me unsettled. If it was just her sister, why the fear? That night, as she slept beside me, my mind raced with questions. What could she be hiding? We've always faced life's challenges together, yet now she seemed distant, secretive. I resolved to address it in the morning, preferring open communication to jumping to conclusions. The next morning, I awoke to find her missing from bed. The bathroom was empty too, which was unusual. She never wakes before me. I searched the kitchen and garden but couldn't find her anywhere. Concerned, I called her, but she didn't answer. Just as I was about to leave the house, she returned, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She told me she couldn't sleep and had gone for a walk in the nearby park. Her explanation seemed reasonable, and she kissed me before heading inside to make coffee. Yet, as we entered the house, I heard a loud car engine starting nearby. It was a sound I didn't recognize from our usually quiet neighborhood. My wife tensed up momentarily but quickly masked her reaction. Driving to work, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling something was off. I happened to see my neighbor, John, and stopped for a brief chat. It had been a while since we'd spoken, and as we caught up, he mentioned something that stopped me in my tracks. He often takes his son to the neighborhood park, but recently, it had been closed for maintenance. This revelation hit me hard. My wife had lied about her morning walk. Instead of heading to work, I turned back home, determined to uncover the truth. I searched her closet and belongings but found nothing unusual. Frustrated, I noticed her laptop on the table and decided to check her emails. At first, I found nothing suspicious, but just as I was about to give up, something caught my eye. An email in her work account stood out, a cryptic message from a random username, providing only a location and time for a meeting at a cafe far from her office. The secrecy of it all sent my mind spiraling. Who was this person, and why was my wife meeting them? I didn't confront her immediately. I wanted to see if she would tell me the truth. That evening, she called to say she had to stay late at the office for a meeting. Her words only deepened my unease, another lie in the same day. Unable to take it anymore, I decided to follow her. I drove to her office just in time to see her leaving in her car. Quietly, I trailed behind her. She drove across the city to the cafe mentioned in the email. As I parked at a safe distance, I watched her enter the cafe with a soft smile. My heart sank as she warmly embraced a man who stood to greet her. Frozen in place, I replayed all the moments we'd shared, the trust, the love. Had it all been a lie? Though I longed to confront her, I held back, wanting to see how far this deception would go. Over the following week, I kept a close watch. She continued to meet this man during lunch, always feeding me excuses about her workload. Their interactions were warm, intimate. They hugged, they dined, and then went their separate ways. My doubts solidified when, one afternoon, instead of attending the office meeting she mentioned, she drove to a fancy hotel on the other side of the city. I decided to follow her, hoping she was just having lunch with him at the restaurant. But my heart shattered into pieces when I saw the mysterious man take her hand in his, their fingers entwined, as they headed toward a room together. I couldn't hold back any longer. I knocked on the door. When the door swung open, the man stood there shirtless. Over his shoulder, I saw my wife lying in bed, clearly waiting for him. The smile vanished from her face the moment she saw me standing there. It felt as if my entire world collapsed in that one moment. Unable to speak, I left the hotel, overwhelmed with heartbreak, and drove home. Sitting on the living room couch, my mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, and confusion, all hitting me at once. I don't know how long I stayed there until I heard the front door open. She walked in, panic evident on her face. "You don't have to lie to me anymore," I said softly, wiping away my tears. I had no strength left to listen to more excuses. She sat down beside me, silent at first. Just as I thought she wouldn't say anything, I got up to leave. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. I turned to her and asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted answered: "How long has this been going on?" With a shaky voice, she explained it started 8 months ago during a work conference out of town. There, she met this man who worked at a different branch of her company. At first, they were just friends, she said. On the final night of the conference, though, after drinking too much, they ended up in bed together. She admitted she felt immensely guilty the next morning and promised herself it wouldn't happen again. She came back home and cut ties with him. But 6 months ago, he was transferred to her branch, and when they started working together, one thing led to another. They rekindled the affair, unable to resist temptation. It was just a craving for something new, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. Each word cut deeper into me, shattering the trust we'd built over 10 years of marriage. That morning, when she told me she'd gone to the park, she was actually meeting him. He even dropped her off at our house in his car. I felt utterly broken, the foundation of our marriage crumbling beneath me. The day passed by in an emotional blur. I was too overwhelmed to make any decisions. I asked her to give me space. For days, we lived under the same roof, barely speaking. I wrestled with the dilemma: should I try to salvage this broken marriage, or should I walk away? My wife kept apologizing, pleading for forgiveness, and assuring me the affair was over. She suggested we try counseling, but the wounds she inflicted were too deep. Even though my heart was in pieces, I agreed to attend counseling sessions. I wanted to believe we could save our relationship. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't erase the vivid memory of that day. The image of her in that hotel room haunted me. Each counseling session encouraged us to communicate, but the betrayal was too profound. My trust in her was beyond repair. I finally decided it was time to let go. I sat her down and told her I couldn't continue being in this marriage. Tears streamed down her face as I explained my decision. She said she'd move out of the house, and I didn't stop her. It was better for both of us. I watched as the movers came to take her belongings. Sitting in the yard, I saw my marriage of 10 years come to an end right before my eyes. She left the decision of filing for divorce in my hands. After she moved out, I spent my days numb, consumed by overwhelming emotions. I questioned whether I was to blame, if I could have done something to prevent her from seeking someone else. I continued counseling, even though the marriage had failed. I needed to heal. Over time, the sessions helped me realize it wasn't my fault. My counselor encouraged me to find new hobbies. At first, I didn't have the energy to try, but eventually, I started exploring interests I'd neglected during our marriage. Though it was hard, it felt peaceful to begin rebuilding my life. The pain slowly started to subside. We mutually agreed to finalize the divorce. She expressed deep remorse for the hurt she'd caused and said she was willing to wait for my forgiveness. "I hope we can be friends someday," she said. "Maybe, with time," I replied. We embarked on separate journeys, navigating through divorce and healing. After 10 years of marriage, being alone felt strange. The house was too quiet. It was odd not having plans with someone. I focused on my mental and physical health, reconnecting with old friends. I couldn't bring myself to tell them about her affair. I didn't want to tarnish her image, as I still felt a lingering loyalty to her. Our divorce proceedings went smoothly, and we parted ways for good. I realized I couldn't be with her, or anyone, again. I hadn't just given 10 years to our marriage, I'd given all of myself. While she sought excitement elsewhere, I was busy envisioning our future. 6 months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. We met in the hot chocolate aisle, of all places. Seeing her after all this time didn't sting as it once did. Counseling had worked, I thought to myself. "You finally started drinking hot chocolate after our divorce?" I teased her. She smiled wistfully. "It reminded me of you," she said. Her expression hinted at a longing for our old life together. I smiled politely and turned to leave. "Want to have it together?" she asked hesitantly. I was about to decline but decided to say yes. Perhaps it was time to test if I could sit with her without pain. We went to a nearby cafe, where we ordered hot chocolates and talked. Strangely, it felt nice, free from the hurt and resentment. While I had forgiven her in my heart, I knew trust would never be possible again. That chapter had closed the moment she betrayed me. My counselor's advice, taking one day at a time, helped me cope with my lingering fear of betrayal. I hope, with time, I can completely let go of it.